There are some truths in our lives that feel as solid as the laws of physics, unshakable, unquestionable. The date of the first human spaceflight, the fact that our calendar counts the years from the birth of Christ, the chronology of ancient civilizations measured in neat lines on museum placards. We grow up believing that history is a fixed structure, a stable, linear timeline stretching back thousands of years. But what if that structure isn't as stable as we think? What if, hidden deep within the foundation of our calendar, there is a crack so significant that it could shatter everything we believe about the past? Some researchers argue, boldly, controversially, that an entire millennium may have been added to human history, not erased, but inserted. Before dismissing the idea as fantasy, let's examine the evidence that may have been hiding right in front of us the whole time. The dating anomalies. Let's begin with something simple. Numbers. Specifically, dates on old paintings, engravings, and maps. Take the portrait of August Ludwig von Schlözer, a respected German historian and one of the founders of the Norman theory of Russian origins. Beneath his name, the date reads 1735. But look closely, really closely. That first symbol? It's not the number 1. It's a capital Latin letter I. Why would a date begin with a letter? Maybe it's just a quirk of old typography? Maybe. But then it appears again. Another portrait, this time the Italian composer Carlo Broschi, dated 1795. And again, the 1 is actually an I, separated from the numbers by small dots. Coincidence? Let's go even further back. An engraving by Albrecht Dürer, dated 1524, shows the same pattern. Not a number, a letter, and again bracketed by dots as if the artist wanted to make sure no one mistook it for a numeral. Different countries, different artists, different centuries, same strange detail. It doesn't stop there. On the medieval publisher's mark of Louis Elzevir, the date 1597 begins with a letter again, not a number, and is separated deliberately from the rest of the digits. And then we see something even stranger, a work by Hans Baldung Green, a German Renaissance painter. The date on the piece includes 3 numeral 1s, but only one of them looks completely different. The first one. It looks like a J, not a 1. The artist clearly understood the difference. He drew it intentionally. So, what's going on? What are these mysterious I's and J's doing at the beginning of dates? The most consistent explanation among the researchers proposing this theory is surprisingly simple. They were not numbers at all. They were abbreviations. I for Isus, Jesus. J for Jesus in Germanic and English traditions. So a date that reads I-75 might mean in the year of Jesus 795, not 1795. This rearranges our entire timeline. If the first millennium digit wasn't the number but an abbreviation, then perhaps the 1000 wasn't counted at all. But if that's true, where did the missing millennium go? And who added it back in? The vanishing millennium. Surprisingly, some historical documents don't hide the 1000, they simply omit it. Take a Russian naval map created under Empress Elizabeth Petrovna in the mid-18th century. The text reads, "Described and measured Odana in the year 740. Composed in the year 750. 750? Not 1750? This isn't an isolated case or a mistake of one cartographer. This is an official state document. But let's leave Russia and travel to the heart of medieval Germany. A coat of arms from West Saxony carries 2 dates, 519 and 527. And again, no thousands, just like that Russian map. But perhaps the most intriguing evidence comes from Italy, the birthplace of the Renaissance, a sophisticated and highly literate culture. Italians referred to entire centuries not as the 1400s or the 1500s, but simply as Quattrocento, the 400s, Cinquecento, the 500s, Trecento, the 300s, Duecento, the 200s. They didn't say the 1400s, they said the 400s, because to them, the 1,000 wasn't counted or wasn't necessary. If several cultures, Russian, German, Italian, independently wrote dates with the 1,000 omitted, what does that imply? Was the 1,000 so obvious to them that they didn't bother writing it? Or did they simply not use it at all? The wall of the 15th century. Let's try to find the moment when our familiar four-digit dates become universal. Surprisingly, historians and researchers hit the same barrier, the 15th century. Around the early 1400s, four-digit dates suddenly begin appearing everywhere, on paintings, manuscripts, buildings, maps. Jan van Eyck, one of the most important painters of the Northern Renaissance, gives us some of the earliest reliable canvas sign dates. On the Arnolfini portrait, the date appears on the wall. On Man in a Red Turban, he carved 1433 directly into the frame. On Madonna and Child, the inscription reads 1429. Clear, unambiguous, true four-digit dates. But when we step just one century backward, everything changes. Signed dates vanish. Maps from the 1300s and earlier rarely contain their own dates, only estimated ones added later by modern scholars. Parchments from the 1200s, 1100s, and beyond rarely include dates written by their original authors. In some documents, the space where a date should have been is cut out. In others, multiple layers of writing reveal erased entries, including erased dates. Mainstream historians offer explanations. Medieval Christians viewed self-promotion as sinful and avoided signing names. Parchment was expensive, so dates were erased to reuse valuable material. People weren't focused on strict chronology. But these explanations raise more questions than answers. If people didn't sign their names to avoid pride, fine. But why avoid writing the date of creation? Why did the practice of omitting dates persist for centuries and then suddenly stop in the 15th century? Why do we see a sudden explosion of chronologically precise documentation right at that moment? Could it be that before the 15th century, the timeline itself was not yet locked in? Could the centuries before the Renaissance be a much shorter period than we think? Duplicates and the glitches. If a timeline was artificially stretched, we would expect to see distortions, repetitions, echoes, duplicated events. And according to researchers working on this theory, that's exactly what we find. One of the most famous examples is the two Napoleons, Napoleon I and Napoleon III. Their life stories run in uncanny parallel. Both were artillery officers, both seized power through a coup, both crushed uprisings in France, both fought in Turkey. Even their sons' birth and death years align with a perfect 50-year offset. This isn't unique. Some researchers identify dozens of such duplicates across different eras and empires. But the strangest pattern is the so-called Catherine shift, a proposed 1,168-year displacement between Roman history and Russian medieval history. If you line up Roman chronicles next to Russian chronicles, separated by exactly 1,168 years, the events often mirror each other. The same wars, the same political reforms, similar rulers with similar biographies, identical campaigns described in different languages. Were medieval chroniclers copying older sources? Or were they recording the same events happening in their own time? Or are these duplicates signs that the timeline itself was later stretched and older narratives were retroactively inserted into a deeper past? Imagine historians in the 16th and 17th centuries gathering scattered chronicles written in many languages. They might have seen similar stories and, not realizing they described the same events, assigned them to different centuries. Those extra centuries would then become what we call the Dark Ages, the Early Middle Ages, the Ancient World. 1,000 years filled with phantom empires and recycled narratives. Who would benefit? If, and this is a big if, history was expanded artificially, who would have the motive, the power, and the opportunity to do it? Let's set the stage. Europe, 15th to 16th century. This was the age of rising nation-states and centralized monarchies. Young dynasties desperately needed legitimacy. What better way to strengthen your claim to power than by connecting your family to ancient Rome? What better foundation for a monarchy than a lineage stretching back thousands of years? At the same time, the Church held enormous influence over education, literature, scriptoria, and archives. Extending the timeline benefited them, too. It made Christianity appear older, more stable, more universal. It emphasized the Dark Ages, a period in which the Church appeared as the sole guardian of civilization. It reinforced the Church's role as the keeper of sacred history. Political elites wanted legitimacy. Religious elites wanted authority. Writing a grand and ancient past served both. Did they fabricate entire millennia on purpose? Or were they simply mistaken, misinterpreting ancient sources? We may never know for certain, but we do know one thing. History isn't a cold, mechanical machine. It's written by people, imperfect, biased, ambitious people. And people leave traces. A call to critical thinking. Our journey began with a simple letter, an I where a 1 should have been. From there, we uncovered maps missing their thousands, centuries labeled as the 400s instead of the 1400s, a mysterious wall at the 15th century where clear dating suddenly begins, echoes and duplicates across different eras, and the undeniable influence of political and religious institutions controlling the narrative. Does all this prove that a millennium was added to history? Not definitively, but it gives us reasons, serious reasons, to ask questions. And that is the ultimate goal. Not to replace the official timeline with a new one, not to claim certainty where none exists, but to remind ourselves that the past is not a fixed, unquestionable story. The past is a puzzle assembled by people with their own motives, limitations, and agendas. So keep questioning, keep digging, keep exploring the cracks in the narrative, because one day someone might uncover the truth behind the greatest mystery of human history, a mystery that has been hiding in plain sight for centuries. Friends, how was the story? I hope you enjoyed it. If you really liked it, don't forget to hit the like button, drop a comment, and subscribe to the channel. And make sure to turn on the bell icon so you'll be the very first to get the next video as soon as it drops tonight. That's all for now. Stay well, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.